At the Garden in New York City, the most brutal wrestling event of the year was finally underway. Symbiote Smith announced their declaration of war to the entire arena. The last man or alien standing in the ring would leave with the unlimited golden belt of the Unlimited Class Wrestling Federation. The Lumberjack and Caveman already entered the fray, but the Gator also emerged from the crowd to join in on the action. The announcers were on the edge of their seats, eager to see the madness ensue from this four-way grudge match. It was looking dangerous enough for the referee to bail out early, and according to Federation rules, that makes this an anything-goes death match. The Gator and Symbiote Smith both showed their teeth, but Smith noticed some sort of light overhead. The time split Eddie Brock broke through the time stream. Wild, the sarcastic Eddie, Tyro, the subservient Eddie, and Bedlam, the super violent Eddie, all lack a human host and are led by the original human body. Their leader focused on Smith since his shirt was pretty familiar. The wrestler stammered to say that he's a symbiote. Eddie was happy to hear it. He grabbed the man's arm and slammed him. The poor guy's body produced an unnatural crunch. Caveman and Lumberjack weren't happy about the newcomers upstaging them. Tyro cracked the Caveman's jaw. They do not have time for distractions. Lumberjack started bragging about how he once fought Captain America. Wild wasn't impressed and lifted him up. Anyone can fight Captain America once. Bedlam asked Gator if he wins the belt since he's the last man standing. The reptile hesitantly agreed. Bedlam grabbed him before he could leave. It squeezed to make the belt its own. After the wrestlers were tossed aside, Eddie picked up a microphone. He made sure it was still on. Then he told them to keep the cameras rolling since he has a message for the people at home. This ring now belongs to the Kings in Black, and it'll stay that way until they get his son and his other. This war is for something far more important than a stupid belt. He welcomed them all to the Venom War. At the same time, a certain symbiote recounted its earliest memories, denying its king and breaking away from the collective as the weak link. It was unique. The symbiote was found and recognized to be an outcast. The concept of self was difficult to fathom for a spawn of a hive. It was easily manipulated. It doesn't remember everything, but its first sentient host was named Tel-Kar, and they were soldiers in a war. War was the first thing the symbiote ever knew. But Tel-Kar wasn't a true host. He controlled and damaged the symbiote. It was forced to do bad things. From there, it did worse things that it doesn't remember. It was bad inside. Its second memory was of another war and another soldier. Spider-Man marveled at the strange alien substance that made his spider sense blare. The symbiote bonded with this new host. It saw nothing but virtues within Spider-Man. Enough for this second host to be considered a saint. Saint Peter. Not bad is what it remembers Peter saying when it first enveloped him. Those words stuck with the symbiote. It would have done anything for him. So it did everything for him. It inherited Spider-Man's war and mission. It even controlled Peter's body when he slept to better protect the humans he so deeply cared for. The symbiote wanted to be with Peter Parker forever. Yet in the place of saints, Peter tried to destroy it. Spider-Man said that he would rather die than remain bonded. Even after that, the symbiote still saved his life. It still wore his symbol. It still fought his war. The war against death itself. That's why it went to Eddie Brock. Eddie thought he was bad inside. He was dying of shame and self-hate. He was convinced it was cancer, but the symbiote made that up to keep him. It knew that was wrong, but when it hurt him that night, it felt a responsibility to save him. At the time, Eddie spoke of what he's become, what Spider-Man did to him. The symbiote convinced itself that it only chose Eddie for altruistic reasons. Eddie needed him. They needed each other. It insisted that it wasn't just to declare war on St. Peter. It became Venom to do a good thing, not to kill Peter and devour his brain. Fast forward a bit later to Venom attacking Spider-Man and vowing to eat his brains. It was complicated. Venom considered the many hosts that came after that. Annie, Angelo, Scorpion, Lee, Flash. All soldiers that it empowered and destroyed. But what about Dylan? Dylan was Venom's child. He wanted Venom to be his soldier, to fight death and save lives. But Venom couldn't save Eddie, Dylan, or anyone. Venom isn't a symbiote. Venom is a parasite. Venom destroys its hosts. Now Venom is just hiding in Peter Parker's closet, the place where it once felt useful, safe, wanted. It longed to be dead like the shirts, socks, and costumes that surround it. Meridius told it that Dylan is still alive and that Eddie will return, but it doesn't know if it can believe him. Here, it simply awaits death. But eventually, Venom was gripped by the hand of fate. Peter was in a rush to suit up after seeing what was going on with the wrestlers. Then he realized what he was putting on. Venom's face sprouted from his chest and begged him not to freak out. Meanwhile, somewhere in the sewers, a kid was trying not to freak out. Dylan was attempting to connect with the symbiote through their bond, but it was not working. Maybe Venom learned how to hide. Or maybe it's his fault for flinching from something that will hurt. Carnage showed him things that the symbiote didn't want him to know. The people they hurt, killed, and everything they felt while doing it. Then, Carnage killed Dylan. He's only alive thanks to his symbiote side. From there, he wound up somewhere that was beyond death. Beyond everything. There, he encountered something that spoke with his dad's voice. It called itself the Eventuality and allowed him 5 questions. Dylan wanted to know what the symbiote would do if it got back with his dad. And what he saw literally scared him beyond death. His dad was like Null. Then he asked how to stop him. The Eventuality said that he'll know when he's older. But Dylan has no idea what that's supposed to mean. His future self told him not to worry. Dylan wondered if the old man was really him from the future. Future Dylan confirmed it. But things didn't really work out that well for anyone. Future Dylan was impressed by how well his younger self was taking the whole time travel thing. For him, the feeling of suddenly having memories of this moment was really strange. Young Dylan told him that it's adapt or die. Sadly, his future self couldn't exactly say that it gets any easier. Right now, he is using a Doomtech time machine, so anything he can change in the past will stay that way. But the further back you travel, the harder it is to change where you came from. He can't do this alone. They need to work together. To kill the future, they need to hit 3 points to give themselves one golden opportunity. He was going to make his younger self a weapon. Failure is not an option. If they can't do this, their dad will become like Null, and everyone will have to face the consequences. Young Dylan explained that he already put together a symbiote team with Sleeper, Toxin, Red Goblin, Flexo, and the Rubber Man. He told himself that it was all for his dad, but he doesn't even know what he'd say to him at this point. He met God and asked what his dad would become, how to stop him, and where he was. But he didn't ask how to get him back. Future Dylan smiled since their dad is already back. Instead, there was a different symbiote that he needs to watch out for. The future Dylan left before finishing his sentence when Toxin came looking for young Dylan. The child of Carnage wondered who Dylan was talking to. The kid just claimed he was talking to himself. Then Toxin let him know that his dad is on TV. Eddie Brock seemed to be having a great time wrestling. The symbiote gang watched the whole thing unfold. Sleeper noted that despite them being symbiotes, they all fight like humans. It's as if they all share the same host. Dylan mentioned that the last time he saw his dad, he was a giant hand. And before that, he was calling himself Bedlam and trying to kill him. They're all Eddie Brock. Eddie brutalized Symbiote Smith with a mighty powerbomb. As the evacuation ensued, the commentators could only pray that the Avengers would finish whatever they might be doing and put a stop to this. Toxin's host spoke up. He argued that if Dylan is their target, then he needs to stay put. Or maybe go to the Fantastic Four or something for protection. Dylan retorted that this is his team. He's the one who brought them together. Bren disagreed. Venom put them together. And without the symbiote, Dylan is not Venom. He's just a kid. If his dad's really gone crazy, how the hell's he gonna fight him? And even if he can fight, can he really put his dad down? Elsewhere, an emergency meeting was being held at Alchemax. Instead of termination, their CEO, Liz Allen, insisted that they contain Eddie Brock before the symbiote panic gets any worse. They discussed who they should send in to do the job. One of them was pretty sure that Liz has some resources of her own. This is Carlton Drake, CEO of the recently acquired Life Foundation. Drake called in one of their top consultants that apparently has a solution to their problem. Mr. Meridius explains to the board that he's been studying Eddie Brock for quite some time. He knows Eddie as well as he knows himself, and has been preparing for a very long time. He continued to mention the product of an Alchemax chemical leak, Chemical K43. It's very toxic to humans and even symbiote life forms. He now presented them with Chemical K44, an improved version of the formula that includes his own secret ingredient. With this ultimate weapon, they would be able to win the symbiote war. Back at Peter's place, Venom expressed its belief that the wars never end and that Eddie and Dylan are better off without him. Peter disagreed since Eddie seems pretty messed up right now, and Dylan could use some guidance. If the kid's gonna see his dad anyways, he'd probably be safer with Venom around. But Venom refused. Now Dylan knows what Venom is, what Venom's done. The symbiote believes that Peter Parker can help them, but Venom can only hurt them. All Venom ever does is destroy. Peter wasn't convinced. That would be convenient, but he's seen the symbiote do the right thing. Flash made it a hero, and it saved the world with Eddie. Venom isn't a mindless monster. It's also not so alien that it doesn't know what good is. Despite the past, the symbiote has learned. Now it needs to make a choice. Do good things, do bad things, or do nothing. Sure, it sucks. Nobody asked to exist. But the price of living is choosing how to live. That's true for every day and every moment. That's the only power anyone really has. And Peter's Uncle Ben taught him that power comes with responsibility. So he extended a hand to the emotional alien. The wrestling victims were being loaded onto stretchers. The surrounding troops were told that the only heroes allowed to enter are the Avengers or the Fantastic Four. They are especially against the involvement of any webheads. One of them wondered if shouting Avengers Assemble would work as something suddenly blurred past them. But when he looked, it was gone. He just chalked it up to being jumpy. Suddenly, the time-split Eddies sensed the presence of another symbiote. But they couldn't see anything. Their leader explained that it's because the symbiote knows camouflage. He recognized Sleeper and asked if Dylan tagged along. Dylan's team revealed themselves. Eddie's son asked if they would be able to talk things out. His dad smiled while saying that they have all the time in the world to talk. He promised that he's back for good. Eddie knows that Dylan cut his other half off from his hive. Eddie stressed the fact that he needs his other. He needs Venom. The announcers decided to stick around and wondered what a kid was doing here. But one of them admitted that Spider-Man was a kid when he beat him up, so it's not that crazy. Dylan refused, but that is not something Eddie was willing to accept. He claimed to have seen what happens if Dylan keeps him, and it is not very good. The whole planet will end up trapped in eternal symbiosis. Dylan doesn't like the sound of that either, but he clarified that he doesn't have the symbiote. Venom is gone. Eddie couldn't believe it. Venom had one job. Dylan had one job. Dylan reminded his dad that he hasn't seen him in months and that he's living on the streets. He shouted that the last time he saw his dad, he was Bedlam. And now, Bedlam is his sidekick. Dylan's dad claims to be back and done with his midlife crisis or whatever, as if he's not going to abandon him for his nonsense all over again. Yet the first thing he does is ask for the thing he killed people with. Dylan shouted that he knows everything Venom ever did. Eddie was stunned by the revelation, but still managed to ask where Venom is. They were interrupted by the sound of chains and a friendly voice from the neighborhood. It was Spider-Man, and he let them know that Venom is in good hands.